And welcome back to another episode of Death Nation, where we are busy putting death out of business. Cool episode coming up here. We're going to talk all about space sustainability and Renaissance Africa with Malik. But before we do, let's thank our sponsors. That's Thrivus. That's $5 all the way up to $160 worth of free Thrivus geoprotectors and nootropics. You know the deal. Go and read the rules. The rules are in the link in the description. Also, I Am Transhuman, David Kelly. Lots of new posts coming out on that page all the time. Thanks for supporting this show. Malik, how are you? It's great to see you finally.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you for having me to your show. I'm following up, and it's amazing what you are doing and the topics you are presenting. Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
We're just herding cats. We're just pulling in great people with great minds, and we're hearing what they have to say. They have a lot to offer the world, a lot to offer the species, and it's a really positive direction that the world can go in. And we need more voices. We need louder voices on these issues, on these topics, whether that's climate change, space sustainability, AI, transhumanism, anything that we talk about here. And you're one of these great people that we want to bring in. You have a really cool background, senior legal consultant specialized in international business law and international space law, PhD candidate for international space law, sustainable space for all mankind advocate, and a TAFS ambassador. Are you going to be going to the TAFS conference? Are you going to be watching it at least? TAFS conference coming up in a few days?
Yes, I would be. It will be on the 22nd, the second day, and I will be addressing the issue of human trafficking and the use of satellite technologies to prevent human trafficking.
Awesome. And that's, Tom Ross down here, Tom Ross, one of his big issues with using AI is to stop human trafficking, especially for children and minors. He's really against this, and he's going to use AI to rout out the bad actors in this field. And it's good to hear that satellites could be used in this as well. Satellites could be used in a lot of different ways. Space technology used to help climate change, illegal logging, illegal fishing, but also human trafficking. We didn't really think about that, and that I'm really looking forward to that, to hearing your conference when you participate. I'm looking forward to hearing that speech.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, yeah, satellite technology, we cannot live anymore without space technology. Like every day, things that we do, telecommunication, our friends, our family. My space interest, it came thinking about the space debris, and it's something has to do with the space sustainability. And I was always thinking about, what if one day with the space debris and it gets overwhelming, and with the new actors and so on into the space economy, and the access to space, it's much easier than before. What about if all that space debris, all in a sudden, we don't have any satellite functioning? I mean, it's the worst case scenario that can happen, but it's feasible. It can happen one day. So that's why I'm advocating for space sustainability and space, let's say, to prevent the use of, or the abuse of this dominion, that, just like what we've done on Earth. So that's why I'm advocating for space sustainability for all humankind.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Let's open salvo on space, because this seems to be like a big topic at the moment, and you're the space lady. I'm hugely interested in space. Space is becoming bigger and bigger, but it's quite an old topic. So where do you want to start? Where do you want to start with the space topic? Let's talk space, because space used to be just, humans would just look up at the stars and they'd say, let's go there. Let's do that. And one day the stars became the moon, and it became something actually tangible. We could reach it. But where do you want to start on the space topic? What's your general interest, and where does it start?
Actually, it starts from the inspiration of space. I think humankind, since the ever. They looked at the space, and they looked for the powers created them. So it was the source of inspiration, and from that source of inspiration, it became a reality, and humankind could harness space to their benefits. And that's why it's the space activities. It should be looked to very, very carefully, especially with the new actors and commercial actors that they are entering into space, to consider the long-term sustainability of space. And this comes, I would like to give an idea about what means space sustainability concept from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. The Soviet Union shocked everybody when it sent the Sputnik, which was nothing more than it had a beeping device inside of it that relayed some messages back to Earth, but it sent shockwaves around the world. Everybody was confused, befuddled, and amazed that the Soviet Union could produce such an object, and that was philosophically. It wasn't a weapon of war. It wasn't the sort of this warring nature of space. It was a scientific endeavor, right? The first man who went into space, the dogs and stuff as well. This was a scientific endeavor. This was pushing the frontiers of what we thought possible. What happened? I mean, has it really changed? Governments seem to, seemed to want to use space to explore. Is that the way it's always been, or is it changing now? Because you mentioned commercial apparatus, but really, when we talk about space, we're talking about states. We're talking about the Soviet Union, the United States, and then now we've been talking to Jose Cordero, and just now in 2020. A little bit back, we're talking about a lot of different governments, from India to Israel to Japan to the European Union project. And then, really, really recently, we are talking about commercial operations. But is there a history of weaponizing space? Because it doesn't seem like it.
Yes. Actually, in the beginning, the space activities, when it was erected it was out of, let's say, flexing arms. Who's going to go to space first between the two poles? At that time, that they were the only two states that they were powerful, and they could follow this endeavor. They are the United States and Soviet Union at that time, and it was about powers and who's gonna go first, and it was about prestige and so on. But that's why the first space treaties, they were about all about peaceful use of outer space. So to reduce the tension between the two poles, because it was really a competition who's going to go first, and at the same time it was the scare who's going to, if some one of the two nations is going to go with some military endeavors. So that's why the space treaty came to ease that tension. And then there is a progressive evolution within the space realm. The evolution went to from NASA and the Soviet Union, the United States and Soviet Union competition, to progressively private actors, they were entering into the space realm through public contract, and that was how they started entering. So then after that, the space realm got privatized. Because at the end of the Apollo program, NASA gave up the human transportation program, and they gave it away. They wanted to see how it's going to go when private actors enter, and that's how Elon Musk and the other private actors entered. And what we see today as the new space, there is a paradigm shift in this in the space, let's say, dominion, the new space, it is very characterized by a new entrant. So the space activity into the entry of states into space activities, they are not only limited to powerful countries. Now we have India, we have UAE, we have and India and UAE, they are becoming powerful in space sector. UAE is making the Mars mission, and it's doing amazing work to get the space like to be one of the space powers in the world. So you have these countries that they entered very late. It's recently comparing to United States and the former Soviet Union. Today is Russia. So plus a lot of states, they reduce the barriers to entry to the private actors to enter into space dominion, to be active into the entry through the technology they are offering, through direct activities into the space realm. Let's say, I give an example. Planet Resources, it's a company that is working for a long time into experimenting the mining activity in space. And that is the problem today, also for other actors, that they try to follow, but they think that it's not ethically done. They think that the space treaty doesn't allow, but it's another subject. We will get to it later. But the space is going now into a paradigm shift. It's the new space, what they call it, and technologies right now, it's off the shelf. It's not like before. To enter into the space activity, you need to develop your own technology or whatever. Now the technology transfer, and the way how states that are facilitating technology transfer, and given a lot of facilities to private actors to go and engage into the space activity. So that's what is going on, and it's going to be very common for a private actor to go into space, especially that states now they are competing through their commercial national space laws. So who's going to give more facility to the private actor to come from another states?
Wow, yeah, that's a really good summary. So, I remember in the 70s, the beginning of the sort of revolution of satellite technology. They started to map the world geographically after that time using satellites, and then it wasn't too long until things like GPS started to pop up, and the internet started to be beamed up. The 90s, everything really took off. But NASA had a sustainable space program for IDEA embedded into its soul, and that was the shuttle program. And the shuttle program obviously wasn't a success for many reasons, and the Challenger really put a dent. The Challenger tragedy really put a dent in that program. But let's talk about, you said everybody signed a treaty. Now, what was the treaty that the Soviet Union and the USA signed about the weaponization of space and the proliferation of weapons in space? What was that treaty? And I would like to ask you, how much relevance, with some breaking news, I guess, for the space industry, and it's getting more and more quick all the time, but with the Space Force, in Trump's Space Force, how much relevance does that treaty have now? And so what was that treaty, and how much relevance does it have now? And do we need a reform?
Actually, the international space law is primarily it consists primarily from of the 5 international space treaties. First one is the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. We call it the OST. The second one was in 1968, is the Rescue or Astronaut Agreement. The third was on 1972, the Liability Convention. The fourth was the 1975 Registration Convention, and the last one was the 1979 the Moon Agreement. We say the first space treaty, which was the Outer Space Treaty, is the Magna Carta of space law. So it set the main principle governing human activities in outer space. It set the main principle. Then all the other treaties came to elaborate the certain principles into a full treaty. For example, the Liability Convention, it set the state's liability when there is any act or any activities that it's damaging to or causing damage to another state's registered space object. When I say space object, it could be a rocket or it could be a satellite. So it's complicated to explain exactly what is each treaty talking about, because we don't have a lot of time with you. But I would be glad to every time to give an idea about and come back to the show to give an idea about each space treaty. But the main outer space treaty, which is the Magna Carta, it gave certain principles that they are later on developed in the other ones. The first principle is the freedom of exploration and scientific investigation in outer space. The second principle is the non-appropriation principle and its consequences on space ventures. And here comes the problem of space mining. Then the third principle is the use of outer space must be exclusively for peaceful purposes. And the fourth one is states' duty in outer space governance under the Outer Space Treaty. So these are the main principles. They're not all the principles or everything is included in the Space Treaty. So when we come and check the space commercial space activity, and that was my research when I finished my Master 2 in International Business Law. It was on the void pertaining the International Space Treaty and how space insurer can fill some gaps. So because a lot of scholars, they talked about filling gaps through proposals and through everything, but there is a deadlock in the space in enacting space treaty right now since long time, and the states are not keen to go ahead and sit and agree upon new space treaties. What they've been doing, they've been agreeing upon soft law. The soft law, it doesn't have the same power of space treaty. It's a voluntary like a code of conduct or a set of rules or so on that states or any other stakeholder can apply. It's not mandatory, or it doesn't have any let's say legal effect later on. If they don't apply, we can take legal action under the international law. So that's why I came with the idea, and it was another scholar's idea. I did not see a lot of people writing about it. There's one scholar from McGill University, and she spoke about space insurer, how he can fill the gap. And I added to the research that the risk assessment, the exhaustive risk assessment and the intervention of the space insurer can fill the gaps. Now we talk about the gaps, okay? Because you asked me what is the problem with the space law right now. The main issue is the open access to everyone, because the space law makes the space domain is a common heritage of all mankind. It means like there's no jurisdiction for any state. It's open for everyone. Even that state gives certain permission and certain it governs the activities of their national. At the end of the day, space law, it's set in an open regime for everyone. So this one and the space activity governs the activity of states, the states member or the signatories to the space treaties. It doesn't have a direct effect on the commercial private actor who's active into space. So it starts with these two things. Then after that, we have the problem of a lot of gaps. For example, there is no agreement about certain rules because the space treaties language is very vague, open for interpretation. So many keywords are missing definitions. So when you have an international treaty is vague like that, and the language is not straightforward and it's not clear, it may cause a lot of issues. And today we don't see a lot of we don't see any. I did note that with my research and so on. We did not see that there is a claim, like official claim for an activity or so on, that it's done. One state is going after the other. But this is very. It will happen in the future because now everyone is active. Everyone is doing things. United States is taking. Decisions and enacting its own laws and without getting together with the other stakeholder to see if this is appropriate or not. So there's no let's say going through the same frequency within the old stakeholders on how to govern space activities when it comes especially to private actors. Private actors right now, what they do is they go to another, let's say, less stringent international climate, legal climate, like for example, going from United States to India. And this is a real case. One company, it went to India to make the launch of CubeSats or small satellites because it was refused from United States. Because they need to have the license to launch their small sats or CubeSats. The United States did not agree upon giving the license because there's requirements that it doesn't fit or it's not sustainable. That company went to India to make it because India facilitates the launch and try to compete to get more private actors into its national space sector. At the end of the day, that company got a big fine from United States and warning, but the harm is already done. There's different satellites are orbiting around our planet, and there's a risk that it's not sustainable because it doesn't fit the criteria set by the United States.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting issue that you bring up there. And I know that the CubeSat industry has had big problems because the United States and China too, arguably, they see it as a threat to their national security because, Cape Canaveral or something is one of the best launch sites in the world. And if you could get a whole bunch of CubeSats going over that launch path, you would permanently sever a tie from the launch pad to space because it's essentially shrapnel that's racing around the atmosphere and would tear up any rocket launches. It's essentially a weapon. That's how the United States would see it, depending on where it is in the atmosphere. And it's really scary when you're in the ISS as well. I've seen them, when there's shrapnel coming nearby and they have to get into the emergency room because it would just shred the ISS. But, it's interesting to see that there's the evolution of laws, the evolution of the treaties is very interesting, but it's also interesting to see the outcomes. And the outcomes was, a relatively peaceful expansion of space. You had the space shuttle, which was an attempt at human launch on a lower cost from the state. It didn't really work, but we know that. You had a proliferation of satellites, both military and commercial, or for all sorts of different reasons, from telecommunication to scientific. The Hubble Space Telescope, for example, or a lot of exploratory satellites that were looking at the sun as a defense mechanism from kernel mass ejections, which is those particles hitting the Earth would be detrimental to any space initiative, obviously, or Earthbound initiative. Overwhelming the overwhelming the power grid, for example. It would plunge a modern technologically modern economy into a dark age, reminiscent of the 1859 Colonel mass ejection event, Carrington event, so called. But so you had the space shuttle, you had satellites, you had the International Space Station. This was fantastic. And now you have competing commercial because of the lowered cost of technology and launch capacity, commercial and states, which are all entering the race. So I guess where are we now? Where are we now with international law? You said the United States, being a space superpower, essentially, is acting a little more unilaterally, acting a little bit more on its own. It's because it perceives the rise of the rest as a threat. It perceives China, Japan, arguably, even though Japan's a friend, probably Iran and Russia, and less arguably the European Union, but that's up for debate. As a threat to its space monopoly. So where are we now? And because where I see we are now, we're in this Cambrian explosion of space activity. We're looking at going to the moon. We're looking at going to Mars. This isn't just a George Bush type, let's go to the moon. This is a JFK Kennedy moment where let's actually go to Mars and launch space settlements. Richard Branson, is very serious about space tourism. There's a lot of commercial entities that want to do asteroid mining. They want to go and get helium-3 from the moon and do moon mining. So and the satellite industry is absolutely booming. So I see a Cambrian explosion. And I see a complicated process getting more complicated. That's my simple analysis. But where are we now?
Well, we are with the space law. We are nowhere.
We're always nowhere.
It became obsolete. Actually, it's the only. I'm going to be fair. It's like the space treaties are the only treaties that they are noble, as in law. Like the principle, it's based on it's very noble. It's like, can you imagine that the main philosophy of space, the Outer Space Treaty, is that to give equal share to non-spacefaring country, and to give equal share of the space exploration to everyone. So and we are today is like who's given space technology to everyone when a state has space technology? Is there any state right now given its technology like that, or its space the use of its space technology to a developing country that they don't have? No, I don't see that it's the case. So with where we are right now, let's take the mining as an example, because there's a lot of misconception about the space mining. They say the international treaties or space treaty prevent space mining. It's not true. When we go back to the space treaty on the Outer Space Treaty, Article 2 on the non-appropriation principle. So the restriction it prevents the national monopolization of space and celestial bodies. Means like the national. When we say national, it's states. So states cannot monopolize space or the moon or other celestial bodies. It also prevents states from claiming their rights of property over territories in space and celestial body by any mean of right of property, including mean of use, occupation, sovereign claim. These are the consideration of acquiring a property legally done under international law. Occupation, discovery, accession, and accretion. This one is done on Earth, but it's not done in outer space, and it's only concerning states. So there's a loophole right there. Because of the vague and open for interpretation language, that it was done purposely. Actually, it was done purposely at that time. You know why? Because at that time they were not even ready to come and sit on the around the table and try to finalize something on space, especially the two pole, like the US and the former Soviet Union. So to bring everyone together and try to find a way for an agreement, to make an agreement, they make it very vague and open for interpretation. Like that, every stakeholder can make use of it, which is not really. At the end of the day, it's possible in an international relation. This is how they do things in order to a little bit get the stakeholders together to sign a treaty. But later on, it's the work of the international court, or the body who's the competent body that it's going to settle the claims between the stakeholder or the states. And so far, we don't have any case that to settle any claim, because it was a couple incidents happened before, and I believe Canada was suffering from some space debris came from. It was a satellite from former Soviet Union that it fell on the Canadian jurisdiction territory, and at that time they solved the issue through. Diplomatic means. So they asked for amount for damages, and it was paid. I believe it was Canada, yes. So and some other incidents was there. So the judge made law or jurisprudence in international law. It's very, very important, and and it's one of the source of international law. So if we don't have that source active and interpreting and making as a blueprint to states and other stakeholders and scholars and lawyers, space lawyers, and so on, it remained vague. So I come back to the issue of the non-appropriation principle. So it was meant to states, to the states who are contracting parties to the agreements. So, and under that article, the explicit prohibition is clearly illustrated. It gives room to deduction, to making interpretation, and it was sorted out by scholars. So the right of property, they said, in the absence of strict prohibition for the private actors, means that it is allowed. You understand what I mean? So if there's no strict prohibition that private actors can make it, it means that they can make it. States are.
It reminds me very much of the exploratory notion of the New World, and and the laws that Europeans wrote up when they were going around the world searching for new places to colonize and new resource points. Sometimes kings and queens in those governments or parliaments, etc., would say, okay, we won't do it, but England, for example, it's not the best scenario, but the British East India Company essentially was the arm of the state, but the state said, we don't really have our hand in India, but through the East India Company, technically, not technically, but they did, right? So they let the East India Company do that. So it reminds me very much of okay, I don't have my hands in space, but by extension, my rapacious company does, and it's an old trick, and you can find it in history, and I find that very amusing and also scary. But let's talk about what does sustainable space look like? What does it look like? What's that future?
So can I get back one step
back
to?
Sure.
Elaborate on the Moon Treaty, because the issue is about the Moon Treaty right now.
Sure. Yes, please.
Yes, the Moon Treaty. It elaborated Article 2, and they came back, and I said, "Oh, there's a problem with the Outer Space Treaty, and we will fix that issue." Or it's not. Like I said, they meant to have the gap, and later on they tried to fix the gap. And the Moon Treaty, under its Article 11, it elaborated the Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty, which is the Article 11 of the Moon Treaty. They call it the backbone of the treaty. And there, it clearly mentioned that non-state actors, means the private actors, non-state actors, they cannot have the ownership over areas in space. So it confirmed the right of property over movable man-made object in space. Okay, so if tomorrow SpaceX or X and Y and Z goes to the moon, and he has the right under its national law to go to mine the moon, as the United States or Luxembourg or UAE, because UAE also lately it enacted the the national space law, and it conferred the right of property to private actors also to mine and to have the right of property. So tomorrow, under the Moon Treaty, I go back tomorrow, if someone from private actor goes and its state is contracting party to the Moon Agreement, there is a problem. It's not. It's against the engagement of the state itself, which is a party of the Moon Agreement. But the news is the Moon Agreement. We call it the failed treaty. There's only 18 states ratified the Moon Treaty. So all the states that right now are like allowing their private actor or non-state actor to mine asteroid and the moon and so on, they're not infringing the international law. So it's feasible if the state is not party of the Moon Agreement. And that's why Trump, in his latest decision, actually a lot of people is like, wow, look at this. It's not new, because the United States already in 2015, under the Obama Space Act, it allowed the space actors to go into to mine in the space asteroids and the moon and so on. So it's not new, but the thing is like, Trump always try to choose the right time to do things and whatever. So it's a call for other international entities and other states to collaborate within this mining of state and state resources and so on, to get them together to find a way. And he chose the time of his decision during the time that everyone is suffering from COVID-19 in the United States. So it's let's say it's a move a la Trump. Let's say it's the usual move of Trump to come up with something during something to distract something.
Yeah. No, he's very good at distracting people from certain opinions. But yeah, Trump. I mean, Obama. Absolutely. I was watching that very closely, and you saw a myriad of news articles coming out in the general news, but also in the business news when Obama was president, talking about $1 trillion asteroids made of gold, all the different minerals that they can go and get. And they really did turn up around Obama's period. And, Obama was allowed to, because he's got a cult of personality, he was allowed to get away with a lot of different things. He was allowed to push through a lot of different, laws and get pass a lot of different laws for the United States that didn't really get any pushback because of his cult of personality. And that was clever on the United States part to use that. And Trump should just keep his mouth shut, because everyone overanalyzes what he does, and he might undo some of what Obama did. So it's very interesting. But what does sustainable space look like? What does that mean? What does that mean for business? What does it mean for tourism? What does it mean for the moon? What does it mean for the satellite industry? What does it mean for Mars settlement? What does space sustainability mean in general?
Okay, sustainability. Let's start with the main word, which is sustainability, because some people, they think that, a lot of people I talk to, and it's like lawyers, and there is a misconception about sustainability idea itself. A lot of people, they think sustainability is about environmental protection, and it's only about environmental protection, which is not true, because it emanates from philosophy, which is the sustainable development concept itself, and it's a complex, multidisciplinary concept based on different dimensions, and the understanding of sustainable development is it's the main let's say concept in our everyday life. If we understand this concept, we could make trade-offs for everything we do. What is best, like even for decision, there are different dimensions in every decision. For example, I'm not going to give an example. I will make it on the space sustainability concept itself. So when we talk about the space sustainability concept, it was defined under the United Nations guidelines for the long-term sustainability of outer space activity, which was adopted on June 21st, 2019. It's the ability to maintain the conduct of space activities indefinitely into the future. So it's for now and later on, indefinitely, in a manner that realizes the objectives of equitable access to the benefit of the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes, in order to meet the needs of the present generation while preserving the outer space environment for future generation. So a lot of a lot of dimension in this in this short definition, and this it's quoted. I mean, it's the same definition that it was given under the United Nations guideline for the long-term sustainability. They started working on it since 2010. And it was agreed upon on 2019. So can you see the process to make a decision when it comes to space, and to come to make a decision towards sustainability? It's amazing how it takes a long time, and this is one of the issues. It needs to be taken into consideration by stakeholders into space realm. Is Don't wait for states to come up and agree upon something. It's common sense. Come on now. Like when you have space activities and you need to send a satellite, it's very, very important to know the trade-off of the satellite. Okay, don't look at the economic income or the ROI, the return on investment, straight away. How about the social return on investment? It's very, very important. The social dimension is one of the main dimensions of the sustainable development concept. The other one is the environmental. Okay, when you send it, is it worth it to have a small CubeSat that his life is going to stay for maybe 6 months or 9 months, or let's say hypothetically, let's say 2 years? Is it worth it to risk the other satellites around? That one satellite is probably, I don't know, it's millions of dollars, and so on. So there's a trade-offs in the concept of sustainability itself, which is applied on the space. So it answers one question: how to ensure the continuity to use outer space for peaceful use, while assuring socio-economic development. So it's social and economic development. It's not only economic development, to meet the needs of the present generation without jeopardizing the outer space environment for future generation to the space exploration. Because now, if they're gonna do and repeat what happened with the the ocean pollution, with the climate change, and so on, and repeat it in the outer space dominion, it's a big risk for the whole planet. It's not for just one country or the other, or because of transboundary pollution of oil spills and so on. The outer space environment is a risky environment. It's very risky environment. Like the space debris, 1 millimeter space junk. When we say space junk, is like a trash, like 1 millimeter of space junk. With the Kessler syndrome, with the activity that is going on, the Kessler syndrome, it's a complex scientific term, which is, let's say, I explain it like easily, with the gravity and so on. The way that 1 millimeter, it will make a damage of maybe big train here if it hits to a small building. You get my point.
Mm.
So yeah, it's an issue, and if that happen, the orbiting space junk right now, it's if you see the charts under the European Space Agency, because they are very active into making guidelines and trying to help stakeholders, commercial actors, and so on, to observe and reduce and track the space junks. It's amazing when you see it. When we started like after a certain time, when we started the space activities when humans started their activity into outer space dominion, and see it now, it's scary. So the thing is, like, how these stakeholders can take into consideration the long-term use of outer space. Because if the long-term use into outer space is not taken into consideration, after maybe 50 years, 100 years, that generation right there will not, if we did not find a solution to reduce the issues of space junk and other issues, which is contamination, because the contamination, it's an issue that is going to be happening later on when they start deploying material and doing things outer space. It will be very risky for them to use space, and risky for the planet, because the planet is one component in big universe, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the risk that this will make in the long term later on. Because our knowledge in space, with all that technology and everything, our knowledge in space is not as we are familiar with Earth, and we conduct daily researches, and universities and researchers and so on that are familiar with the risks that can happen with everything happening on our planet. It's not the same way that it's in outer space. So that's why it's very, very dangerous, and that's why it is critical. It's critical because the world is witnessing crucial legal challenges facing new space activities in the middle of these conflict or conflicted geopolitical space race, that every state try to counter capability of the other, and who's going to have the same or better, and who's going to be trying to make some suspicious activities to find to the satellites of others. The second issue of how space sustainability is critical is the entry of the space actors, which we said, the private ones. And we don't want that these actors do the same thing that they've done when they started colonizing Africa. The history, I mean, human will not be there, that we are worried that human will be enslaved and so on. But the way that the greed and how they treated the resources in Africa, it's a lesson for us to take into consideration, and not repeat the same thing and go into space with the same mindset. And I think with the mindset, it's you are the best to say how it could be dangerous with the existing mindset and greed and so on. to take it out to outer space and bring it back here, because these companies that they would have the main the advantage to be there into space and have this space advantage compared to other companies, and it will make a big imbalance in the wealth allocation. So the balance will be worse than before, because we have an imbalance right now in the allocation of wealth allocation, and the poverty will be more, and so on. So that issue right there will bring more issues into Earth. And the third is the contribution of space activity to the international economy. The use of space technology in addressing to terrestrial issues to serve the sustainable development goal, it's very, very important. So we don't want to miss the environment of outer space, and lose our capabilities because of irresponsible activities made by commercial actors, commercial private actors, or from states that they try to compete on the expense of the environment over there, or in the expense of the long term activities for the next generations. So here I told you with the mindset how to go to space in the proper mindset. This is you to answer, because you are the best to talk about the mindset of people, and how, if they went with the same mindset we have right now into space, what could happen.
Yeah, and there's lots of interesting points embedded in this, and it comes down to human sort of human action, human nature. What is human nature? And philosophers and etc. have been battling over that. And I think transhumanism swings in here a little bit, trying to reform human nature. Just self-directed evolution, trying to cure ourselves of diseases, open up life to a brighter future, so that we don't drag some of the bad characteristics, bad sides of human nature into space with us and become rapacious. My philosophy, theory, unproven as of yet, but I think I will be, long after I'm dead, it will be resolved. I would consider the human species to be a player in the galactic scene. I would be very surprised if there aren't a myriad of other types of aliens, or whatever you want to call them, whether they've already come before and their civilization is now gone, whether they'll come after, or they're here and now. I think we're in a the universe is only 13.8 or something billion years old. We're not that far into the lifespan of the universe. It's going to be a long journey. Five more billion years until our own sun even goes. So you've got 5 billion years just on that of humans doing stuff. So this is I think we will be a participant and a player in the galactic scene. I think there's a lot more out there. But if we do if we do get out into space, it's what are we taking, and what are we going to do with the resources? And even if we do find microbes on Mars, hypothetically, it's not out of the question. We could be discovering that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, disclosure depending. But that will shake and that will rock humanity to its core, and they will be questioning who are we all over again, and also what's our place in the universe, and the question about other life forms. But are we going to take an aggressive attitude towards those microbes? Are we going to wipe those microbes out? Because what we do to microbes, I mean, we're bacteria essentially, and cells, and a combination of different processes that make up our body. What do we do to those microbes actually will be a reflection of what we do to more intelligent species if we do come across them. As we've been sending out strands of our own DNA and music records, etc., and there are plenty of entrepreneurs and philanthropists and people out there who want to seed the universe with life by putting life essentially on little crafts and sending it out. So even if our civilization somehow takes a long time to get up into space. Maybe one of these will become, some sort of civilization. So I don't think that would be out of the question. But what are we taking? And I think this is a really big question. And if we are going to transform Mars, I think that's a really interesting question, and it's a really fundamental. And you mentioned the time period over which to get sustainability, ratified essentially by these 18 different nations. The definitional stance, and it does sound like a long time, and I will agree with you on that. That is a long time, but contextually, it's not, because it is a really, really important question. It's one of the great questions, and I like this idea that in the short term, we do have to start rethinking sustainability of space in the context of not just ROI, not just economics, not just national projection, national power, prestige, all those glory, or whatever you wanted to mention as well, but in the context of social development, in the context of technological development, in the context of positive human development, in the context of scientific awareness and scientific research and scientific development. I think all these things are really, really important as well. We do debate here a lot on this channel about the definition of GDP, gross domestic product, because gross domestic product, it's a great indicator sometimes about finished goods and services and the development of human life. And, you see a correlation with GDP and human life and stuff like that. And that's really, really good. But it's also really, really old. And we've used this metric now for a long time. And we're hitting a point now, and it's especially with the space people, especially with biotech, especially with AI and emerging technologies. We've hit a point now where we do have to be open to a debate about GDP and about the different metrics of measuring human health, human awareness, human development, and it has to start to change, because what we embed into the incentive structure in ourselves, when we go to, you can't have a rapacious take-all system on Mars. I mean, you don't have the resources to have a rapacious take-all system. You need you'll have limited resources, scarce resources. You have to have a sort of a managed economy from the word go. When you're on a ship in the 1400s sailing across the ocean blue, if everyone was hyper-capitalist, rapacious, competitive, they would have no food, no direction, no captain, and they would sink in the middle of the Pacific. And there's plenty of boats in the bottom of the Mediterranean or the Pacific, if you want to go see them, of actors that behave that way, but they're not the actors that survived. And but we also don't want the other result of, when they get there, they mistreat everything. We want to learn and develop and grow as a species, so that we learn from our own history, and that when we do get there, we do respect those microbes. We do manage it in a different way, a more human way. We do it benefits everybody. We do scientific exploration. We do human development as well. And that doesn't mean you can't do economic development. I mean, obviously, this is the big debate going out, but there has to be a global debate. And it's almost too late. It's getting to the point where it's getting too late, because the governments we're looking like we're ready to go. Elon Musk is getting ready to go. We're running out of time. The clock is ticking on the debate of what we're going to take out into space in this context. But we still have time to manage this debate, and there still are people out there. And law is especially important. I would say the most important, because it enshrines the incentive structures of what's legal and what the corporations can do. And you have to take a page out of the bank's books for when you're structuring these laws. In the rapacious banking world, for example, they let's say they do a $13 million worth of damage, and they claim $13 million worth of profit for, they destroy a forest or something, but they take in $13 million, and then they know that the law says you can get a $5 million fine. So what they do is they say, all right, $13 million for me minus 5, and then that's the cost of doing business. It becomes the cost of doing business. We can't allow that sort of model of the cost of doing business to go out into space. So, you get an asteroid and it's $1 billion asteroid, and they know they're going to get a $15 million fine. That's a silly, but $15 million fine for mining it. So the $15 million fine and the negative PR is the cost of doing business, and the rest is to reap the profits for disobeying the law. Facebook and others do the same thing. They say, oh, what's the fine? How much data can we steal? All right, we'll pay the fine. That's the cost of doing business. So, these state actors really have to wake up to the fact that you can't plug in low penalties for the cost of doing business, because it's what we're taking forever out into the solar system and the universe beyond. And it's really, really important that we get this right. But GDP, absolutely, I agree with you. What is social development? What is economic development? What is human development? What is technological development? And why we need to think about these things when plugging these in to returns, to the new ROI.
Yes, and yes, it's the new return on investment. Like with the space exploration, the return on investment, it's mostly social, like on a human way. It's more important than the economic way, than the economic return on investment. But at the same time, the return on investment on space exploration, it's huge, because the new space has found what we call it the space ecosystem, which is a new economy. It's booming through the satellite use and through a lot of other aspects that is going on right now, which is the trends of fundings coming from for the startups. And now billionaires are putting huge amounts to invest into space activities, because there's one important point about it, because the space sector, when I say space sector, is globally, because space is global by nature. So it's open for everyone. So they choose because there is less restriction, and there's no there's much less restriction doing space business or doing space activities than the other activities, and the return on investment it's much higher. I think one of the company, I made an article on New Space. One of the company the funding firms, they are saying, I think it's four times the investment, the return, 4 times the investment, and it's a huge, actually. And the space economy, it's matured. It's not getting, it's matured already. So there is a good return on investment economically, but like you said, there's beyond what is economic ROI. It's a social return on investment, and this one, because also the private actors, they have the capability of helping in a lot of ways with their space capabilities, in helping developing states like Africa and so on, with the public-private partnership. It's very, very important, and this is what I will be speaking about when I make on 22nd the trafficking, preventing human trafficking. The private actor bears a responsibility, a social responsibility, that they are in space industry, that they own space capability, to partner with these states in Africa. When I say states, is country in countries in Africa, to help preventing human trafficking, to help in disaster management, to help countries in providing them Earth observation capability, to help agriculture. So many private actors can do. And when I say space sustainability advocate, I don't advocate against the private actor. I advocate to raise awareness to the space sustainability, that the private actor bear an amazing and huge responsibility, that they can change, make a change in to humanity, and especially in developing countries that they don't have space capability. They are not the United States. They are not European countries, and so on. So these countries are in need for a partnership with the private actors. And I would like to add still also one thing: the long-term sustainability. Guidelines. It's not a treaty. It's guideline, and it's adopted during the 62nd session of the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space on June 21st, 2019. So it's not treaty. It's a guideline that states and private actor can follow on voluntarily basis. So it's not a treaty, and raising awareness about it, and raising awareness about among young kids. It's very important, and that's what I'm trying to do, starting from my own son, is to be responsible toward not only the environment on Earth, but he's aware about issues that aware about space, aware about the need of human species. They are expanding beyond space. He's making a novel now on sci-fi on a colony in Mars, and something happened, and so on, and how love brings aliens and humans together, and so on. All this is because of the habits of mine that he's growing through, hanging with me all the time, and I get him involved into some researches. For example, I tell him, "Mommy, I don't know how to make how the satellite works. I don't know how this works. I don't know." And even if it's in my research and I write about it, I try to see how to push him in a way that he's a partner with me in this, and he's going to help me because mommy doesn't know, and he comes very excited and very happy and proud that, okay, I get the solution, I get the answer for you, can you sit with me and explain to you? So
Yeah, it's an engineering problem. It really is. If you look at it from any angle, whether you're in law, it's about engineering the correct laws. It's about engineering the correct signatories to the guidelines, as you said, or it's about engineering the correct capabilities or the correct So this is very, very exciting and well done. All right, let's quickly switch gears just to talk about Renaissance Africa. That's also a very exciting initiative that you're involved in. What is Renaissance Africa?
Well, Renaissance Africa, it was an idea came during this time lockdown. I'm from Tunisia, so I'm originally I'm African, and I left my country long time ago. And since then, well, I left like all the young people try to leave Africa to go look for a better education, for looking for better jobs, for a decent life, and so on. So they risk their life. I did not risk my life. I went to the United States to get my education over there, and I struggled like all the youngster tried to work and to study and so on, and I couldn't finish over there what I had to do and so on. And then I came here and I started my law and economic degree. Then after that, my first master, second master, and I'm making my PhD research right now. So the thing is, like I said, okay, now and since then, I want to raise awareness to the young people in Africa, in my country. It's not the solution. Leaving is not the solution. And when I was little, I witnessed some people, they go through the illegal immigration boats from Tunisia to Italy, and I saw coffins coming back over there. And that picture and certain pictures never got away from my mind. All the time I remember. And it's like, how can I help? How can we help? Like, how to raise awareness? How can we help that these brilliant people, they stay in their country and build that country? And after the Arabic Springs and so on, it was worse than before. And this is what I saw. First time I went after the Arabic Springs. Okay, I got not harassed. I got beat up. They stole my phone. They wanted to take my bag and so on. So even the small little sense of safety over there, it's not there anymore after the Arabic Springs. That proved that these revolutions, without having a ground that is, what is your solution to after the revolution? What is the solution? You need to get the economy going. You need to help these young people get a job, to get decent life, to help the economy, to help all the aspects, the social aspects, and to be better than before. So during this lockdown, I came up with something. It's like I said, I want to make a drawing or a sketch of the sustainable development during COVID-19, present and future. And I see the problem of this circle of the known one, of the sustainable development one: economic dimension, social dimension, environmental dimension, and institutional dimension. And what is going on right now, for example, the economic dimension, what I was seeing at that time when it started the lockdown and the issue hitting with the COVID-19, and the economy was going downhill. And I saw shaky financial system, capital market distress, liquidity problem, real economy challenges and issue, capital formation disruption, growth cessation, investment freezing, and this the sectoral challenges, starting with the aviation and tourism and so on. Then I see at the environmental dimension, carbon emission is reduced, endangered species. I've seen some videos in some area. I've seen in India, I think. They are roaming around at that time when they were in complete lockdown, or some other country, roaming around in the streets and so on. And I sent to Osi Kanachi, and I told him, listen, I have this idea. How about if we make think tank to think about sustainable development issues after the COVID-19, and get grounds for economy, for society, for institutions, for this and that. And this work is so huge. It cannot be done with one researcher or two or whatever. We need to have as much as people, economists, philosophers, environmentalists, doctors, and so on, to help in this. And then he came up with let's make Renaissance Africa, and we make it. Why Africa? Because the founders are we got together are from Africa. Africa is the cradle of civilization, and Africa is the most country right now, and so from ever in need for restructuring, for getting its economy going, for hunger, preventing crimes, for hunger issue, to solve a hunger issue, a health issue, and so on. And then that idea came with the Renaissance Africa. Renaissance Africa doesn't have anything to do with governments. It's not about against governments. It's not about it has any political affiliation or anything. People that are getting together to find solution for the society, starting from Africa and going everywhere. It was in the beginning the idea to Africa, and now we are saying it's going to be for humanity, because now with the globalization, we don't think about one continent, one country, one continent, one whatever. We need to think about humanity as one. We are in one spaceship. It's the Earth. What I call it, like others, other people, they call Earth is our spaceship. We have only one spaceship. We're all together on it, and we want to get together with great minds to find solution, which they have dimension under the sustainable development concept. It's not the goal; it's the concept, because people they mix about the sustainable development goals and the concept. And this one is starting from the concept we want to propose, and after the proposal, at least we can propose and we can think and we can induce the mental change, because society is very, very important. If you don't like you said, engineer a sustainable society, you will not have any sustainability or anything. No economic sustainability, no institutional, no environmental. So it all starts from bottom-up approach, and that's what we are trying to do.
Yeah, and I like this a lot, and you know refocused it to humanity. But absolutely, Africa is a good place to start as well. I mean, there's a lot of places in Africa that need assistance in this area, and I agree with you. It's about empowering the populations that are there. It's about not allowing richer societies to brain drain essentially the talent out of those countries, and so that they can stay in those countries and support their own communities, their own nationalities, and by a larger spillover effect, the diaspora of those areas. So no, I agree with you, and it is unfortunate that a lot of the geniuses consider their only way out to escape to Europe, or to escape to the United States, or to increasingly China, and other places. Because of desperation, and the fact that they're coming back in coffins at times is also disheartening. But because like once we were talking before, and the problem with that is, let's say they go to America, they get a PhD, they do very well, but then because America has different problems, they have a staying power, so they might focus on some other higher tree problem that will help and benefit America, because they have a large pay packet there, a lot in the IT industry or biotech, or even the United Nations might scoop them up, but who knows? But then the place they came from will suffer more, because they won't return. Now, maybe they will send money back, but that money doesn't really promote and fix the issues. They actually need talent and boots on the ground that have brains in the economy to build sustainable solutions. Because the problems in an advanced country and in a developing country are completely different. And sometimes people in more developed countries don't realize just what some of those issues are. We're talking about food, water, and shelter, Project 222, sustainable food, water, and shelter. These are very, and increasingly in the United States, you are seeing these as well. Go and look at Las Vegas, go and look at the car parks in Las Vegas, and you've got homeless people through all of the car parks sleeping on the road, while the building behind them, the hotel, the multi-mega hotel behind them is full of empty beds. So that's a system problem. You see, there's enough empty beds and there's enough room, but for some reason we can't get the people from the car park into those beds because of the system problem. There's a problem there, but it's not because of the resources. The resources are all behind them in the empty hotel rooms. So there's a system kink, there's a system problem there. But in a developing country, we're talking about food, water, and shelter. We're talking about sanitation. We're talking about the distribution of health care. We're talking about, social problems, a lot of psychological issues that are coming up. And then we're talking about larger things like good governance. We're talking about local, less corruption is a huge big one. Getting a good framework between governments. So, you don't have a United States of Africa in Africa, but, intergovernmental panels are extremely, extremely important, so you can navigate risk and share ideas across Africa's a huge continent. You've got Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa all in the same place, which are all completely different, but they all bring their own perspectives and ideas to the table, and all their own unique talents. And sometimes getting these countries to talk is difficult, but it's something that can be achieved. But yes, I absolutely agree. It's about empowering people so that they can have the resources and tools, because they have the ambition, but it's the it's the mechanism of richer countries, and that's not just Europe or the United States anymore. That's a lot of places now that entice those people away from those locations, and the same thing is happening in South America. We could also talk about South America, which then brings you to the point, or parts of India which have internal distribution problems, which actually brings you to your larger point about it's a human crisis, and it will take an all of human approach to sort out and deliver and generate solutions to some of these issues. And for everything that has been said, the World Bank has done a great job of eliminating a lot of extreme poverty. But it doesn't stop that mechanism, that structural issue of brain drain and disempowerment, because of resource distribution or information, etc. So no, this is a great initiative, and really support it, and I really encourage it. And again, that GDP idea coming up again. We have to start thinking about social, technological, institutional, environmental, governance, and other factors as well that somehow figure into a figure that correlates human health and well-being with human geographic location to indicate better human development.
Yeah, GDP doesn't reflect the issues, the social issues. A country can have the highest GDP, but you have a lot of poverty and people they don't even have, like not even a place to live. So
the United States is the richest country in the world, and yet they're dealing with mass issues of homelessness, mass issues of high depression, suicides en masse. Wealth inequality is out of control. The United States is a very good test case for having a lot of wealth, but also having a lot of human inequality, human issues, human problems, and it's a big GDP, and you can see the same thing in China. So and other in other places. The mental health, because fundamentally economics, all these issues that we talk about, they're all down to human mental health. It's all about human mental health, and how do we arrange that mental health so that we can get happy, productive members of humanity, that contribute to the betterment of. And it's really important that we do this as well, because when we get to Mars and finally have the settlement and we start shipping people to Mars or to the moon or out to wherever, we're going to be picking up everyday people, and we want those people to have a better footing. We don't want to be we don't want to be shipping off mental issues, mental health problems, mindsets of structural inequality or anything. We don't want to be shipping problems all around the solar system. There's enough problems in the world. We want to start sorting out spaceship Earth right now, and sorting out the mental health of everyone on the planet, so that when we do go and explore, we will have a much better, solid idea of who we are, what we are, and why we're doing it, and what we want to achieve by going out into space, into the universe, and perpetually exploring. I hope. It's a beautiful vision, and it's a good idea. But yes, I agree. It starts here on Earth. It starts here at the very local community. It starts with the most local community you can get. That's the individual, and it works out to the family, your local community, and your national community, and the interrelations of those national communities right up to humanity as a collective organ, essentially, on the planet. No, I totally agree with this. It's very, 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 very good.
I would like to add something, because I see on Facebook, on social media and everything, people that are complaining and complaining and complaining about the situation, about this and that. But at the end of the day, they are not bringing alternative solutions. Okay, you are complaining about your government, you are complaining about the situation. Okay, what is the alternative solution? What is it? And that's what I said about the revolutions and whatever. It's a failure, because at the end of the day, if you don't have an alternative solution, and if the individual is not aware about his own rights and what he can bring to his community, he's not going to go anywhere. So each person in the society has an active role toward prosperity, toward overall betterment. Because it's not the government that it's at the end of the day, most of the country, the people are the one they choose the government. They are the people they choose their representative in the parliament and so on. But are you choosing the right person? Okay, is he the best you have? How can you have a better one? How can you like you said, people are going overseas from Africa, which they are like experts in economy, experts in finance, experts in this and that. How to bring those people to take care of their country and get rid of the corruption? This one, it's not going to happen unless a bottom-up approach. Everyone is responsible to get a better situation for everyone. It's not the government's fault, it's everyone's fault to be together and to build a future and to have alternative solutions. And number one is education is very, very important. And that's why the thing.
Sorry, yeah, and most revolutions, like the Arab Spring was a revolution against economic inequality. A lot of food prices went up, obviously, and it began with a self-immolation. But it was for democracy. They were trying to promote a more democratic idea, and that was a part-way solution. And they used the tools that they had. They used the tools of social media to try and light that fire. But again, it is hard, and it is problematic, and it's something that we need to come to a conclusion about as a global community. The MENA region, you know very well, a very big young population in MENA, very big young educated. Iran, very big young educated. But how do we utilize these people and how do we give them and empower them?
Still, UAE is doing an amazing job. I mean, I came to UAE like 15 years ago, almost 15 years ago, maybe more or less. It wasn't. I've seen a lot of areas today. When I go, I don't recognize anymore the way that it developed and the fast how it developed. People that would say, yeah, it's the oil money or what? It's not the oil money. It's the brain. It's not because I'm living here or whatever, because if I did not like, I wouldn't stay 15 years. But the vision of their leaders and the leadership they have and preventing corruption. There's no corruption. I mean, I worked for 15 years here. I never encountered a problem in the justice system or something that it has a corruption origin. That's not the case at all. I mean, people are responsible. Leadership is amazing. Even during the COVID-19, the way that they are managing the situation is unbelievable compared to what I see in Europe. And I have family over there, and also the vision that they have and the integration of the young people and how they are betting on their own young people to give them the best and to best education, to help, to be there, to support, to feel they are existing, to feel they have everything they want. It's different than when we go to Africa. I mean, the person over there doesn't even feel that he exists, doesn't even feel that he's a human, because he doesn't have rights. He doesn't have. They say they have rights on news and so on, and we're doing well. That's not true. I mean, we lived it, we know it. Yesterday I was talking to someone in Nigeria. I was hearing people with the guns outside. I mean, with the lockdown. The lockdown is not a lockdown. People are roaming the streets with guns and fighting. That is what's going on in some regions in Africa. So like I say, with the Renaissance Africa, it's about think tank. It's about finding solution and proposing solution. It's not. It doesn't have any other, let's say, agendas or whatever. Because I see a lot of people, they do movements against the government. I don't have anything to do with the government, and the founders also. And it's a movement it's intellectual movement. It's bringing back the Renaissance era into action, to get philosophers, to get economists, to get professionals and so on, to help find solution to our societies. coming from starting from Africa and going toward humanity and other in other areas of the world.
I love it. I'm a
That's
fan. I
that's
love
the
it.
vision.
Yeah, I love it. An intellectual fight back, and that's exactly what we need. Don't worry about the governments come, governments go, but ideas hold forever. And if you can get the right idea or the right mix of policies, you can start your own, should I say, revolution, your intellectual revolution, which can change the course of history. And it's very exciting.
We are in a revolution, right? And it's a consciousness revolution. We are in the middle of I
Yeah.
think it's not in its peak yet. I think so, because it's gathering, it's gathering all these people, the conscious people, toward the betterment of humanity and the evolution of our species. It's the
Here,
time.
here. Yeah, you're right, 100% right. People are sick and tired of being trod on, being put down, and not having solutions generated that benefits them and their family and their loved ones and the people at the whole. Because we realize now, there's a few flat earthers out there, but nobody believes those people. Everybody knows that we're all in this game together. We're all stuck on this planet together, and that we need to manage this together, or we'll all perish together. And no one wants that. So the people are waking up. People are taking it seriously. And they're doing it in their own unique ways, and I totally agree. And it's exciting and it's fascinating. Renaissance Africa, very cool. Hey Malik, I've had a really, really good chat with you. You're fantastic. Been really, really enjoyable. We've had a great chat. This has been really fantastic. Lots to learn. Lots about space sustainability, the definitions of space sustainability, the space treaties, the space guidelines. I've learned a lot. It's really interesting. We live in this really you could do a space show every day. It's changing all the time, especially with Boeing and Elon Musk and Richard Branson, and a lot of these reusable rockets are really changing the game. And I mean, the space shuttle, as we said, was an attempt at getting that reusable rocket, but now we've got real reusable rockets. And Wernher von Braun would be extremely excited. I think he's jumping for joy somewhere. So it's really really exciting to see. And yeah, so,
Hello?
yep, I'm here. Yep.
Yeah, I thought you. Okay, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, anyway, and I want to thank you for coming on, and I really look forward to seeing you again at some point. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at TAFS. The conference. Your specialty on human trafficking and using advanced technology, i.e., satellites, to prevent this. This is a big issue. This is a good issue. This is something that's really pervasive. Human trafficking, human slavery is very pervasive in the modern 21st century. Just because you don't see it or you don't read about it doesn't mean that millions of people aren't being abused, especially women, especially children in the sex industry. It's horrific. This is a great cause, and if we can use advanced technology to track down some of the perpetrators or eliminate it completely, which would be really good. That's I'm all for that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have to say on that. But I'm also looking forward to seeing everyone at TAFS and what the conference. So.
Because it's amazing. I mean, the people put together to share their expertise. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on Detonation. Been really fantastic. We've got lots more to talk about. I want to talk to you a lot about UAE as well, and I want to talk to you in the future about medical tourism in your area. I know medical tourism is taking off, so UAE really planning ahead with space, but also a lot of medical tourism taking off in the area as well. Talking about oil, the post-oil world, these countries are really thinking forward, and they're also really thinking forward on robotics. There's a lot of robot stuff going on there, which is really exciting. So I want to talk to you all more about that as well in the future. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Still. Thank you.
All right, that's all. That's it for Detonation. Thanks, Malik, for coming on the show. Thanks everyone who supports Detonation, keeping the show on the road. And that's Detonation. I'm Steel Archer. That's Malik. That's UAE. That's space. Thank you very much.